last night, but we are going to talk some basketball to start out this show today, and it's a story that has gripped this city, has really kind of caught waves nationally, and that involves the University of Memphis Tigers basketball program firing four coaches off the staff, including lead assistant Rick Stansbury, along with Faraji Phillips, who's someone who's very well known around here, Demetrius Dyson, who was a special advisor to Penny Hardaway, and Jamie Rosser, who just joined the staff last year, another Memphis guy. And then following that, less than 24 hours later, we get wind of this anonymous letter that has been sent to the NCAA alleging Penny and the Tigers program of some pretty serious allegations involving payment of players, including DeAndre Williams and Emmanuel Akot over the years, as well as athletes, four of them in particular, Jordan Brown, Javon Quinterly, Malcolm Dandridge, and Ashton Hardaway off last year's team who allegedly were not taking classes for themselves, were having academic advisors and whatnot do their schoolwork for them. So, yeah, it's been a busy week now. It must be said a couple things here. First and foremost, the letter is anonymous. We don't know who sent it. We can't verify how much of it, if any of it, is true. There is supposedly evidence. We have not seen that yet, so I'm sure the NCAA will take a look at it. And obviously, I think that for transparency purposes, obviously we should say that the Penny Hardaway Show does air on Action News 5. I'm obviously one of the hosts of that show. So, but that being said, obviously this is a pretty major story in the city, in the college basketball world, so we have to address it. So, yeah, just messy. I think the biggest thing to me is, you've got people saying, well, last season was a disaster, so if you fire these four guys, it's not that big a deal. And I agree with that big picture. My problem is you fired them 2 months before the season is set to begin. If you fire these guys and whoever else coming off last season, I think after last season's disaster, nothing should have been off the table as far as staff changes. If you had to fire them in May, all good. Go for it. I don't think anyone would have had any sort of problem with that. When you fire them 2 months before the season starts, literally 2 months to the day before the season opener against Mizzou, after all these players have been here on campus for months, yeah, it's gonna raise some alarms. Now, Dr. Ed Scott did go, the new athletic director, he did go on 92.9 FM ESPN on the Jeff Calkins show today. He said that a couple of things. One, that Penny unequivocally will be the head coach for the season opener on November 4th. He said these were basketball decisions made by Penny and Penny only, and that the letter coming out the day of or within 24 hours of the coaching firings was completely coincidental, and that those two things were not necessarily tied together. So, but it's a lot. It is undoubtedly a lot, and it's a lot for a program that we have to be real and say recently has not won enough to necessarily justify some of the off-court stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, it's been a pretty tumultuous tenure, and I think that's kind of the part that kind of garners a lot of national attention, as we've kind of been through something similar to this before in the past, and now more allegations of, illegal recruiting practices. It's just not what you want, especially at this point in the season. And now you've got to get all these new people in the building and learn everything before November 1st tip off. It's not going to be easy.
I do think that there is certainly an aspect of it. I think it's been discussed by some people. They had they have a huge staff. They had a huge staff, and they were due to have another huge staff this season. It looks a little more bare right now, but Penny is planning to bring in Andre Turner, Tiger legend, on his coaching staff. Our Doc Holliday was the first one to report that. Nolan Smith, who's a former Louisville assistant, planning to bring him on the staff, and Mike Davis, who's the former coach at Detroit Mercer most recently. So I think there is an understanding that they probably couldn't pay those three guys to come on the staff, and then also Stansbury, Faraji, Dyson, and Jamie Rosser. So I think that the money was certainly part of it. Again, probably would have been nice to figure that part out earlier. But yeah, listen, the part that complicates a lot of this, obviously, is that it is Penny Hardaway. It is the most iconic sports figure in the history of this city. And frankly, for everything he means to Memphis and to the University of Memphis, for what he's accomplished just coming from the 901 and playing for the Tigers in college and everything he's done for them, I frankly think that he does deserve more leeway than an average Joe. Sorry, that's just how it goes. You know, someone of that stature is going to get a little more rope. Has he used up some of that rope over the 7 years? Yes, absolutely he has. I don't think the rope is unlimited. It's tough to imagine a world where a brand new athletic director comes in and within 3 months says, oh, most iconic figure in the city's sports history? Nah, you're gone. And Ed Scott said today that's not going to happen. So it's messy. Hopefully the stuff in the anonymous letter is not true. But here's the thing. You could justify some of this, or you'd be willing to put up with more of this if there were more NCAA tournament appearances, more conference championships, whether that be regular season or tournament. And if this team, come November, can win, I think a lot of this stuff will not necessarily be forgotten, but people are going to be a lot more willing to put up with it. I think that it's all of this is coming out. There have been other scandals before, and they're coming off a season where they started off so well, clearly had a ton of talent, could have competed on any given night with any team in the country, and just fell flat on their face once conference play started and missed the NCAA tournament in embarrassing fashion, if we're being honest about it. So if they can win, that'll solve a lot of problems.
I think at least best case scenario for this season, you're looking at a lengthy NCAA investigation that goes nowhere. Best case scenario.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
And that can, in fact, impact a team like this
Yeah,
significantly, especially a team that's missing a bunch of its coaches.
Yes. There's going to be a cloud over. There's going to be a cloud probably over the program all season, and it's going to be on Penny and this new look staff to help them navigate it, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, definitely not what you want with a couple months left before the start of the regular season. Mm-hmm. Other basketball news this week. So G.G. Jackson, we reported last Friday that the Grizzlies announced that he broke a bone in his foot. It's called a Jones fracture is the most common term for it. He's playing a pickup game, I guess, outside of Dallas, landed awkwardly on his foot, broke a bone in his foot. Grizzlies announced earlier this week that he had surgery. It was successful. He's going to be reevaluated in 3 months. So that puts the reevaluation at the beginning of December. So even if he is totally cleared to get back on the court beginning of December, we're looking at the first month of the season, a little more than the first month of the season he's going to miss. Then after that, it must be acknowledged that the Grizzlies, especially the last couple of years, I can't really blame them, especially after last year, notoriously cautious with injuries. Very much so. So I'll be honest, it wouldn't shock me if we don't see him until closer to the new year, which is fine. I mean, they have enough depth. They can survive without G.G. for the first month or two of the season. Is it ideal? Absolutely not, especially the way that he finished last season, some of the flashes he showed in Summer League. You want him to take that next step this year to be a real contributing piece off the bench, as kind of a super six man, I imagine, on a contending team. So you want him back, but also he figures to be a long-term piece of your core. They've got him locked up for the next couple of years. You don't want to rush him back either. And foot injuries it's usually for bigger guys, like 7-foot guys. But G.G. is, for someone his size, around 6'10". Foot injuries can be a little bit tricky to deal with as well. So you want to be cautious, get him back on the court. And it's not a situation where it's a dire need, at least at the start of the season, and you'd rather have him be full go for the stretch run, getting into the spring and hopefully early summer.
You say they have the depth, but that was the problem last year, is the injuries just kept piling on top of each other and on top of each other, and there was no depth behind any of the guys that kept getting injured. So it's really disheartening to have late August a major injury for the Grizzlies after the season they just went through.
Yep.
But yeah, they definitely have the pieces that can fill that role that G.G. would be playing. But yeah, it's a tough loss. Either way you spin it.
Better late August than late September, at least, I guess, is the one positive. So wishing him a speedy recovery, because we all love talking about G.G., watching G.G. play. Mm-hmm. Very charismatic young man, funny guy, really good dude. So yeah, wishing him a speedy recovery. Hopefully we see him at some point in the calendar year 2024. Grizzlies has also announced a couple of kind of minor signings today, but with one notable name in there, and that would be Armando Bacot, who, if you're a college basketball fan, you'll remember him as a North Carolina Tar Heel. He spent 5 years at Chapel Hill. He won a national championship with them. He is the program's all-time leader in rebounds and double-doubles. He is among the guys that they signed to, I believe these will be Exhibit 10 contracts, and these guys are going to spend the majority of the season in South Haven, I imagine. I believe the other kind of notable name that you might recognize on there, let me see the spelling again. Yeah, Malzinha Pereira. He spent some time. God, if you play basketball immaculate grid, the Grizzlies are going to have some incredible answers for you based off the guys they were playing at the end of last season. He got some run at the end of this past season when everyone was hurt and they were just throwing out guys that you had never heard of on a nightly basis and somehow remaining competitive. So, yeah, 4 guys on Exhibit 10 deals. Like I said, they will all be in South Haven the majority of the season. Bacot is the one notable name. Not totally sure how his game translates to the pro level just because he doesn't really shoot at all, but he's pretty athletic. He's a good rebounder, can block some shots. So we'll see. He's a bit of an older prospect too, obviously, because he spent 5 years in college.
I know there's a lot of Tar Heels hoping he pans out at the next level.
Yeah, for sure.
Such an iconic player in their history.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, when you lead North Carolina in anything, you did pretty well for yourself. So, Grizzlies announcing those signs today, and if you want to go down to the Landers Center in South Haven and check them out at some point this year, they will be there. All right, let's switch to the gridiron. We've got Friday Football Fever coming up this week. Do we have a fancy graphic showing all of our games?
Do.
I believe we do. All right, game of the week. I mean, it speaks for itself, man. Houston versus Germantown. Battle of Germantown, about like 5 miles separates those schools. We'll hit on more in a second, but they've got a history the last couple of years in the playoffs, including last year, so excited for that one. Got Brentwood making the trip to Christian Brothers, or Griffin Demeray is going to be at that game. NBA versus MUS, a lot of abbreviations in these games as well. MUS won a rain-delayed game 23-0 last week. Bartlett traveling to Collierville. I know Collierville went on the road and won last week. That should be a pretty good game because Bartlett's looked pretty good so far. They've got a stud running back, Jerron Johnson, Mississippi State commit. So look forward to that one. Southwind hosting Center Hill. Now, we sent our photog, Adam Chrysler, out to Southwind last week. Their power got knocked out at the stadium, so I don't think they ever played that game because last Friday was a mess. But that'll be their star junior quarterback, Kelvin Perkins, looking to put on a show against Center Hill. And then Cordova versus White Station. That's another Region 8 6A game out in East Memphis. But yeah, Houston, Germantown, really excited for that one. So the last 2 years, these two teams have played each other in the regular season and also in the playoffs. 2 years ago, Germantown knocked out Houston at their place in the playoffs. Then last season, both of these teams really, really good. Germantown rolls through the regular season, wins their first 2 playoff games. Houston starts out 1-2, including their second loss in Game 3 of the season, was to Germantown at their place. And then in the playoffs, they ran it back at Germantown. Red Devils were 12-0, and Houston came in there and just frankly whooped up on them, beat them by 20. Mustangs go on to win the state championship. Red Devils are kind of thinking what could have been. So I'm not going to say there's bad blood in this game, but it is certainly a rivalry. It is certainly 2 of the best, if not the 2 best programs around the Memphis metro area right now, and they're separated by 5 miles, 10 minutes. So it's going to be a really, really good game. Germantown's a little different look this year. I know they lost Jamari Morrow, Mizzou commit, who's one of the best weapons in the entire area. Mustangs are largely running back. They lost some weapons too, but they're running back a lot of guys from last season, including starting quarterback Chandler Day, who is actually congratulations Chandler. I saw him yesterday. He's a Tennessee baseball commit, left-handed pitcher. So he's going to take his talents collegiately to the diamond. But yeah, man, I'm excited for that one. I'll be out covering that game. I'll have a preview coming up on Action News 5 and 6. But that's going to be a good one. Look forward to that.
Yeah, it's good to have a rivalry on tap to
this early in the
end of
season
week.
too.
Yeah.
This early in the season because it's the first region game for both of them. So they're getting thrown into the fire right away. But in that Region 8 6A, that is the kind of the SEC of football around the Memphis Metro. Because you got Houston, you got Germantown, you got Collierville, you got Bartlett, you got Whitehaven, and some other schools in there that I'm probably forgetting about. I apologize, but yeah, there are no easy games in that region. So really excited for that. NFL, like I said, back at long last, and boy, if the rest of the season is anything like the first game of the season, we are in for an incredible year. Ravens Chiefs a rematch, of the AFC Championship game last year that the Chiefs won in Baltimore. Obviously, went on to win the Super Bowl, and when you win the Super Bowl, you host the opening game of the season. They hosted it in Kansas City at Arrowhead last night. Man, the first quarter of the game, first couple of drives of the game were pretty exciting, and then it got a little dull, but the ending was terrific. Ravens fall 27-20 by that much, like a Kevin Durant foot on the three-point line. Isaiah Likely looked to have made an incredible catch in the back of the end zone as time expired in the fourth quarter off, frankly, an incredible extension of a play and throw by Lamar Jackson, but his foot was on the line by literally that much. And with that, the Ravens comeback falls short. Chiefs start out their two-time Super Bowl defense, looking to become the first team to ever three-peat. They started out with a 27-20 win over what's going to be, I imagine, one of their chief rivals in the AFC. Just two of the most exciting players, really in league history. Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. They did not disappoint last night. The game at large was awesome.
I don't know about you, but I kind of expected the Chiefs to maybe kind of sleepwalk through the regular season again like they did last year for the most part. But they looked really good. And even though the Ravens looked pretty bad at times, the fact that they only lost by 7, I think, is probably cause for optimism for that team.
Yep.
The offensive line looks like it needs some work.
Yep.
The passing game needs a bit of work. Lamar did miss Zay Flowers wide open in the end zone to finish that game. He said he was throwing to Bateman.
Yes, I thought.
I
thought at first it wasn't a total miss as much as it was miscommunication in terms of. I thought Lamar believes Zay Flowers was going to sit in that zone in that spot he was at,
right.
and Zay just kept rolling a little bit. But yeah, apparently he said he was throwing to Rashad Bateman. Yeah, so kind of takeaways for both teams on my side at least. For the Chiefs, this offense is clearly more dynamic than it was last year when, remember we were having panics about the Chiefs up to Christmas Day when they got whooped at home by the Raiders and no one thought they had a chance to win the Super Bowl. And obviously they turned it on in the playoffs, but I think that their offense this year is going to be even much better than it was last year. You look at Rashee Rice, obviously he's got this pending legal situation. It's pretty serious hanging over his head, but all indications are he's probably playing most of this season, if not the entire season. I think the next date in his case is in December, and I imagine a lot of times those things get pushed. I imagine that could get pushed into the offseason as well. He had a major impact last night, 7 catches, 103 yards. He's kind of if you look at his route tree, he's kind of a new slant boy, like a la Michael Thomas back in the day, but the Ravens kept matching him up with a linebacker, and Rashee Rice just kept tearing the shreds. So, yeah, you take advantage of your matchups. He's good. He's good out of the slot. He's good in the open field and in the middle of the field. And, yeah, he was doing damage last night. Obviously, the rookie Xavier Worthy, fastest 40-yard dash time in the history of the NFL Combine. How many touches? He had 3 touches last night, and he scored 2 touchdowns. 1 on a reverse on his first ever NFL touch. And it was one of those things. I don't know about you watching, but I knew Xavier Worthy was fast. I watched a little bit of him at Texas. Obviously knew what he did at the Combine. So I knew how quick he was. But when you see him on an NFL field just dusting everyone, it's like, whoa, that's different, man.
It was incredible. And I think everybody had the same exact reaction as like, whoa, this guy is
it's different.
That fast.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of the Alabama receivers from a few years ago when they had Waddle and Ruggs and
Devontae Smith.
Yeah. Seeing them just zip across the field, that's kind of what it reminded me of. But, man, Worthy's going to be a problem, especially in that offense.
Especially you think about, I think probably one of the best comparisons I've heard for Worthy in terms of how he might get used. And you think about the head coach, Andy Reid. Andy Reid had some fun with Deshaun Jackson now. And I'm not saying Xavier Worthy is as good as Deshaun Jackson right off the bat, but you think about like a smaller, incredibly fast receiver. Yeah, that could be scary. And we're talking about the receiving core. Rashee Rice obviously has kind of become this, this yak yards after catch possession receiver. I think Travis Kelce, I'm a big fantasy football player. I did not draft any Travis Kelce this year because I think he's going to sleepwalk. I think he will sleepwalk through most of the regular season and save his body for the playoffs because clearly he's still got something in the tank. We saw that in the playoffs last year, but 3 catches, 34 yards last night.
I think he kind of needs that at this point in his career. He's, 34, I think?
Yeah.
There's a lot of mileage on there because they have been going deep into the playoffs every year. And he's been playing at such a high level for so long. I think he does kind of need a little bit of that ease through the regular season.
And I was going to say real quick on the Chiefs, and they don't have Hollywood Brown, who is going to miss the first couple weeks of the season, I think. And I'm not saying Hollywood Brown's not some superstar receiver, but Hollywood Brown is better
It's
than
another weapon.
a lot of the guys that they were running out there at receiver last year. So, yeah, and to me, I think probably as encouraging as the offensive upgrades is to me, the defense, despite losing L'Jarius Sneed, who was one of the best lockdown corners in the league last year. Defense looked really good last night. To be honest, I think there are a lot of teams, if not the large majority of teams, that defense would have just completely smothered last night. Lamar Jackson kept the Ravens in the game because we'll hit on the Ravens in a second, but Lamar's largely, I'm not saying Lamar's perfect last night, but if you do have a guy that can extend plays the way he can and make the plays outside the pocket that Lamar does, that game could have gotten uglier real quick. So, yeah, the Chiefs are going to be a force. I think they are better than they were last year. They have, in my opinion, the best player to ever step on a football field, Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, they're going to be a factor the entire year.
And they have the new best defensive lineman in the league now that Aaron Donald is retired.
Chris Jones?
Chris Jones.
Yeah, Chris Jones is a monster, of course. I mean, he was in the backfield all night last night. Although I have to shout out the last 2 plays of regulation, the Ravens had Justice Hill picking up Chris Jones one-on-one, and he did an okay enough job. So bold move.
Doing anything is good enough job, yeah.
Yeah, bold move there. On the Ravens side for me, so like I said, Lamar Jackson did play a perfect game, and I don't know if this is sustainable, but 122 yards rushing on 16 carries. There was talk about him leading up in the offseason to get some of that quickness back, and most of the time I don't pay attention to those stories, but he looked as explosive last night as he has in a couple of years. He looked really, really quick and just sudden in his movements, and it was fun to watch. Now, they are not going to be able to play 17 games that way. They're going to have to figure out something with the right side of this offensive line. I do think that was something that the weaknesses on the right side of the offensive line were probably exposed a little bit by the Chiefs having a really good defensive line, defensive front, and Steve Spagnuolo, their defense coordinator, he'll blitz you. He'll send the house. And to be honest with you, they didn't really send that many blitzes last night. At least the eye test told me they didn't send a ton of blitzes last night. But, the Ravens offense last night was kind of some Mickey Mouse stuff. There was a lot of screens in there, a lot of short targets, a lot of dump-offs. And I think a lot of that was because they knew that they had to get the ball out of Lamar's hands quickly because the protection was just not going to hold up. But Lamar, 273 passing yards, passing touchdown. He did have 1 turnover. He fumbled. Derrick Henry, go ahead.
Yeah, speaking of Derrick Henry, I was going to say, if they can kind of get some of those offensive line problems sorted out, they might be able to get Derrick Henry going because he didn't have a great game last night. He did have an early touchdown.
Yeah.
But
I think some of the Derrick Henry stuff, I'm a one-team Derrick Henry owner fantasy this year. I wouldn't worry too much about it now. Is he going to be playing a ton of third downs and obvious passing downs? Probably not, but 13 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown, and no catches on either of his 2 targets. But to me, I think the relative lack of touches compared to what we're used to from Derrick Henry largely stems from they were trailing after the first quarter. They were trailing the majority of that game, and I felt like there were a lot of kind of behind-the-stick situations where you're going to have your pass-catching back and Justice Hill back there. I think that this team is going to win a lot of games as long as Lamar stays healthy. Lamar being healthy basically gives you a floor of 10 wins in the regular season. They're going to be ahead of a lot of games. They're going to pound the rock with Derrick Henry. I'm not too worried about that. The offensive line, we'll see. But even last night, there were some plays where he was bottled up in the backfield and he made something out of nothing or gained a yard or 2 as opposed to losing a couple yards. I certainly don't think he's washed. Really, the story receiving-wise for the Ravens, Isaiah Likely, oh boy, 9 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown, and he almost had the game-tying touchdown.
A lot of Mark Andrews fantasy owners shaking in their boots right now.
I will say, I saw something on Twitter today. It basically showed Mark Andrews was bracketed and doubled on almost every one of his routes last night. So the Chiefs clearly had a game plan to take him out of the game and limit him, and it worked. But yeah, I think we're going to see the Ravens and a lot of 12 personnel this year. One running back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. I think you'll see a lot of Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, their young receiver who this is kind of like a funny stat line to look at for Zay Flowers. 6 catches, 37 yards on 10 targets, but he had like 4 targets called back by penalties too. So he's going to be a feature part of the offense. I really like Zay Flowers, young receiver, and Rashad Bateman, a first-round pick a couple years ago. But yeah, they're probably going to live in a little heavier personnel, throw to their tight ends a lot. But yeah, I don't really have many concerns about the Ravens right now. Don't get me wrong, this is a team that has to get over the hump in the playoffs. That's where they, and especially Lamar, can judge out, because we know they can do it in the regular season. Lamar's a 2-time MVP. It's all about, can you get over the hump? Can you beat Goliath? Because right now the Chiefs and Mahomes are the one in the way of everyone, especially in the AFC. So can you get over that hump? It's kind of a similar conversation we're having about the Bills and Josh Allen. So
and with all those problems, they were still about a half of a shoe size away from winning.
Yeah,
So
I
at least going to overtime.
I would probably venture to say that the Ravens are the biggest threat to the Chiefs this year. Maybe you talk me into I think it's them. I think right now it is probably them, but we shall see. We do have Friday football fever in Brazil between your Green Bay Packers and the Eagles. That game being played on Peacock tonight from Sao Paulo, right?
There's a lot of intrigue to this game. Obviously, I'm a Packers fan, admittedly, but you got to see if the Packers can relive that second half offense from last year that was really exploding behind Jordan Love. They've got so much depth at wide receiver that nobody really knows who the number one guy is going to be at this point. And then on the Eagles side, they looked kind of the opposite. They looked horrible down the stretch last year. There was rumors of head coach and quarterback not getting along, 2 new coordinators. So they're really looking to turn that around, and they still have so many weapons too.
Yep.
Just kind of everywhere. Adding Saquon Barkley, Brown and Smith. It's going to be really interesting to see how both offenses look tonight heading into a new season.
So on the Packers side, I very much believe that what we saw in the second half last year was real and sustainable, because I have a ton of belief in what I saw from Jordan Love, and I've long had a ton of belief in Matt LaFleur as an offensive coach and play caller. And we got a piece of the ceiling falling off here at Action News 5. Our engineering crew calls it chaos. Anyways, we'll stay focused on the sports here. But like you said, they've got this huge room of receivers that are all good to some level, but no clear-cut number one. Okay, so who do you think leads the team in receptions this year?
I think Jaden Reed will lead the team in receptions.
Yep,
He's just kind of one of those guys that's always open, like a safety blanket for Love. He may not lead the team in yards or touchdowns, but I think receptions, he's the easy pick.
Have I told you my comparison for Jaden Reed?
Go ahead.
Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I think he could become that for sure. Jaden Reed looked like the clear number one for them at points last year. There was points where it looked like Dobbs was the best receiver on the team. There was a time when Dontavian Wicks looked like the best receiver on the team. A lot of people are really high on Wicks this year. And then Musgrave is a good pass catcher. Kraft.
I think Kraft might be better than Musgrave. I mean, it's
Bo
certainly.
Melton had a couple 100-yard games last year. So it's really loaded.
Wicks, to me, is the best pure, line him up outside receiver. Mm-hmm. I don't know where he falls in the pecking order, because you're going to run. You've got Jaden Reed in kind of this do-it-all kind of weapon role. You got Christian Watson, who maybe a little lower at Christian Watson than a lot of people. I think he's a big play threat and really explosive. I don't think he's quite as polished all around as some people might think. And then Dobbs and Jordan Love clearly have a real connection. So, yeah, and then you mentioned the tight ends, the running back room. Now they got Josh Jacobs with, Emmanuel Wilson is the backup right now. I think that when he's fully healthy, Marshawn Lloyd is probably going to start eating into Josh Jacobs' workload. So, yeah, I'm high on the Packers this year. If they are representing the NFC in the Super Bowl, I would not be shocked one bit. On the Eagles side, like you said, Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts is everything good in paradise there. We are a year and a half removed from them, coming really close to beating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. They add Saquon Barkley this offseason. Last year's offense coordinator, Brian Johnson, who I think was kind of a disaster, is gone. In comes Kellen Moore, who had a bit of a weird year with the Chargers, but I generally think pretty highly of him. I think that he's going to be good for that offense. We've got one of the best receiver duos in the league in A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and there's no reason to think that either one of them are going to have anything but productive seasons. And Vic Fangio coming in as a defense coordinator. Now, I will say we have seen over the years that teams that bring in Vic Fangio or that system, it does take them a little bit of time to get up to speed. So I wonder if that's something the Packers take advantage of tonight. But the Eagles, purely on talent, again, should be a 10-win team. They should be.
Oh, easily.
On talent, I think they're better than Dallas. And I don't know which coaching staff I have more confidence in. McCarthy, I don't know, man. But regular season by McCarthy could be all right. So it's playoffs where things get a little bit wonky. So, yeah, I'm excited for that game, though. I think that, and the Packers have a new defense coordinator too, Jeff Hafley, coming from Boston College, replacing the embattled Joe Barry, who Packer fans were screaming to get rid of for probably 3 years. So, yeah, I think that's a fun game. I'm excited to see how it plays out. I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to watch because I'll be tied up with high school football around here, but we shall see. All right, let's give a quick run through some other interesting games on the slate. So, week one, almost everything looks good. I'll just shout out a couple right here. Let's give a quick look. So we've got the return of Arthur Smith to Atlanta. Smith, obviously the son of FedEx founder Fred Smith.
A lot of people are quite high on Atlanta this year. You know, their roster is not too bad. It's going to be dependent on how Kirk Cousins folds into all that. But there is a lot of talent there.
I'm pretty high on them, mainly because they brought over a bunch of guys from the Rams on the coaching staff. Raheem Morris, new head coach, former defense coordinator with the Rams. Zach Robinson is their offensive coordinator. I believe he was the quarterback's coach there, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, and like they've talked about, and this is all training camp chatter, so you can't read a ton into it, but I think that they plan to use Bijan Robinson as like an all-purpose weapon. They've talked about Drake London in the Puka Nacua role over the middle of the field. I think Kirk Cousins can really maximize Drake London this year. I think that his skill set matches up pretty well. Well,
Plus the enigma that is Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts, he's all good. I know there was a little scare earlier in the week after he was limited in practice with a hamstring injury, but it looks like he's all good to go. So, yeah, I'm pretty high on the Falcons this year. What their ceiling is, I don't know, but can they? I think they should relatively easily win the NFC South. The Buccaneers might have something to say about that, but yeah. So, yeah, Arthur Smith and Steelers going into Atlanta. It looks like Justin Fields might be starting for Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson is dealing with calf tightness, so that would be a wrinkle right away. I think Justin Fields is better than Russell Wilson. Neither here nor there, but we'll see. Cardinals-Bills is kind of fun to me. I'm pretty high on the Cardinals this year with Kyler Murray coming back full offseason healthy. They draft Marvin Harrison Jr. I have drafted more Trey McBride in my fantasy leagues this year than probably anyone on the planet. So if he doesn't live up to the hype or if he gets hurt, I might be homeless. Cool. But I'm pretty high on their offense this year. I think they'll be a fun team to watch. And, the Bills, obviously the first game post-Stephon Diggs era. Josh Allen is Josh Allen, but how does he make it work with a receiving core of Khalil Shakir, who I think is a pretty good player, Curtis Samuel, and then the rookie Keon Coleman?
This is going to be his biggest test by far. But, he's overcome a lot, but losing Stephon Diggs it's probably his biggest challenge so far. I don't know how the Bills are going to look this year. I'd be pretty worried about that offense just from a weapons perspective. But when you got a franchise quarterback, sometimes that's all you need.
I will say I put in 3 MVP bets. Josh Allen, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers. Kind of like a favorite middle guy and then a bit of a longer shot, although Rodgers.
I think if the Bills can get to about 12 wins, Josh Allen will probably deserve it.
The narrative. You got to think about MVP. It's such a narrative award. If the Bills win 11 or 12 games this year and make the playoffs after losing Stephon Diggs, it is going to be all everyone's going to anoint Josh Allen as one to carry the offense. Whether it's true or not, I think it probably will be if they win 11 or 12 games.
Yeah.
It's a narrative award, though. It's the same reason like Rodgers. Like, if the Jets win 11 or 12 games and he looks really good after what happened last season, that is the easiest narrative in the world to back for MVP. So, we'll see.
A fifth. It would be a
Yeah,
fifth.
the time with Peyton Manning for the most all time. I'm not going to run through every game here. I will say Titans-Bears is pretty intriguing.
First
NFL
look at
debut for Caleb Williams.
Yep.
I've said it. I think I said it a little bit last week. I'm pretty high on the Titans this year. Maybe not like high as in like I don't think they're going to win the AFC South, but I think they could be sneakily a pretty fun team that puts up a good amount of points and can support multiple offensive weapons and just going to kind of air it out with Will Levis. And yeah, I'm excited to see them.
I like what they're building. They have a young quarterback. They've given him weapons. Calvin Ridley coming off a great season. I think Tony Pollard can bounce back for sure. Kind of a split backfield with him and Spears, but the talent's there.
Yeah.
It's just a good looking offense around Levis, so he's going to kind of just be dependent on how far he can take them.
New head coach Brian Callahan comes over from the Cincinnati Bengals, where he was their offense coordinator. Yeah, I think that he understands to win in the NFL now. Listen, I said it last week. I understand when you got a back as good as Derrick Henry, you're going to build around him. You're going to run the ball a lot, but they did not throw the ball well enough or enough period in terms of volume to win with the previous style of play they had. And now I think that with Brian Callahan, they're going to throw the ball a lot. And, they're going to run too, obviously, but I think that they're really intent on using Tony Pollard, shout out Memphis native, and then Tyjae Spears as pass catchers out of the backfield. You also did mention DeAndre Hopkins dealing with a little bit of an injury right now, but it sounds like he's going to play in week 1. So, yeah, I'm excited to see the Titans this year. I think they could sneakily be like an above 500 team, and we'll go from there. What else we got? Cowboys-Browns could be kind of fun. Tom Brady's broadcasting debut on Fox. Jaden Daniels makes his NFL debut in Tampa against the Buccaneers. Commanders going there. Curious to see how he looks. I'm pretty high on Jaden Daniels. I was a big fan of him at LSU. I think his game will translate pretty well to the NFL. He just has to slide and stop taking those cartoon hits because we're talking about Lamar Jackson taking too many hits last night. Jaden Daniels isn't quite built like that yet. So.
I think we saw what LSU is missing without Jaden Daniels a lot this weekend too.
Emily Neighbors and Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
And then the Sunday night game right here on Action News 5 on NBC, Rams-Lions, Matthew
that
Stafford.
One looks real fun.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford going back to Detroit once again. That was a playoff matchup last year. Lions won that one. It was a pretty good game. That was a really good game. But I think this is one of the highest over-unders of the entire weekend. Let me just look real quick. I believe it is, yeah, because that over-under is 52.5.
Yeah.
So the Rams defense, admittedly, might really stink this year. Who knows? They develop guys pretty well, but on paper it does not look like a good defense, especially losing Aaron Donald. But I think their offense is going to be electric. So I think there are going to be some points put up in that game. So that'll be fun. And then I will be stress watching Monday night, hoping Aaron Rodgers makes it through more than 4 plays against 49ers. Admittedly, like the script writers are kind of toying with us with this one because Monday night, obviously last year he tore his Achilles, 4th play of the season opener on Monday night against the Bills. Week 1, here we are, week 1. They're back on Monday Night Football, this time against his childhood team, the 49ers. That's, as you know, as a Packers fan, that place has been a house of horrors for him. So, honestly, if they get through the game relatively healthy, I'll probably be happy. But if they win.
It will be interesting to see how the Niners look with all of the contract disputes and how that plays out with guys missing a lot of
Trent
practices.
Williams, Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
Ayuk.
It'll be interesting to see if they look like in mid-season mode, which I would assume that they won't.
McCaffrey dealing with a little bit of like a calf thing from training camp as well.
Yeah.
Ayuk, great receiver. He's getting clamped by my boy Sauce Gardner, though. Getting clamped. All right, so that's NFL. And then real quick, college football week 2. We've got all 5 of our Mid-South teams in action right here in the 901. Memphis taking on Troy. I was on with my guy Greg Gaston on Sports 56 earlier today. He informed me that Memphis is now, I believe, an 18.5-point favorite tomorrow. That was like 14 to start the week. So Troy coming off a loss to Nevada in week 1 at home at that. So, yeah, that looked like it could be one of the best group of 5 games of the entire season. Maybe not as much now, but we'll see. You never know. It's college football. I'm sure that Troy's going to be juiced up for that game. Looking at another Group of 5 team that they're kind of trying to chase down and go from there. We do have a really good one with featuring the Razorbacks, who beat Pine Bluff in their season opener. Traveling to Oklahoma State, the Cowboys beat South Dakota State last week 44-20. That is a ranked matchup, or excuse me, Oklahoma State is ranked. I think we kind of talked about, like, if Arkansas can somehow go there, and I don't know how likely it is, but if they can go to Stillwater and beat them,
Season suddenly looks a lot different.
that would be pretty big, I think, for Sam Pittman's job security and his hopes of making it through the season with his job. So I'm not sure that I'm exactly picking that at all. I want to see what the line is there. But and Oklahoma State is a pretty good team. So I'm not picking that. Arkansas to pull the upset. What do we got? Oklahoma State minus 10. So sizable favorites. Not impossible, but yeah, that would be big if they could pull that off. Your guys go to Arizona State. You guys have this little series with them, right?
That's a In Spirit Pac-12 After Dark.
Yeah. What did you think of last week? I mean, it's Eastern Kentucky, but
yeah, I mean, it's hard to judge based off of that kind of opponent, but the offense looked competent everywhere. The defense held up. It's a tune-up game, and that's what it was. But you take a big win anytime you can get it. Arizona State, I'm not sure how they looked.
I did not watch that. I know they
catch
won.
that
They
one.
beat Wyoming pretty bad, 48-7.
Okay, so that's kind of just a tune-up for them as well.
ASU minus 5.5 tomorrow, so it could be a competitive
Okay.
game. We'll see about Blake Shapen, the Baylor transfer from Mississippi State. I wasn't a huge fan of him at Baylor, but maybe in this Jeff Lebby offense, he could take his game to another level. Who knows? Down in Oxford, the Rebs, after just absolutely throttling Furman in their dress rehearsal game last week, now get
a second tune-up game for them.
yeah. Listen, I think they're bigger favorites for this game than they were going to the Furman game, because they're 43-point favorites tomorrow night, and I think it was like 42.5 going to the Furman game. So, yeah, Ole Miss. I would give Ole Miss this. People are saying that it's a cupcake schedule to start the season. It certainly qualifies as such. That schedule will get a lot tougher in due time once they get into the thick of SEC play. So,
Yeah,
I'm willing to give them
Middle
a couple
Tennessee squeaked past Tennessee Tech last week.
I have a
Nice,
feeling
a
the
7-point win.
I have a feeling the Rebs are going to win by a lot tomorrow.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
probably
safe,
the
it's a
expectation.
safe bet.
And then the last one, a good one in Charlotte, neutral site game. Tennessee taking on NC State, and this is the Duke's Mayo Classic. This is a fully ranked matchup. This is the Vols number 14 in the country. NC State coming in at number 24 in all the land. So that should be a pretty good game. And I imagine, I don't know actually, Charlotte might be kind of 50-50 because Knoxville to Charlotte's not terribly far, I don't think. I imagine Vols fans.
It'll probably be close to 50-50. I would imagine NC State contingent might be a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, NC State didn't look too great last week. They ended up winning, but they kind of struggled at times. A lot of people had high hopes for them coming into the season, so definitely a talented group that the Volunteers will have to deal with. Obviously, Tennessee, kind of an easy win last week. Again, all the tune-ups.
Let me see if I can finally get his name pronounced correctly. Nico Iamaleava. I think I got it right that time. But obviously, a lot of hype around this kid. Some people saying that they think that he might be the best quarterback in college football sooner rather than later. He set a program record with 314 passing yards in the first half against UT Chattanooga last week. So he's going to look to continue that momentum. He looks really good, especially for someone so young. But he's gonna get a heck of a lot bigger a test tomorrow night in Charlotte against NC State than he had against Chattanooga last week. But man, we covered a lot of ground in about 40 minutes or so. So I think that's all we got for today. Appreciate you coming in on your day off to help out with this.
Of course, I am excited about next week because we'll get to talk about Florida State. That's all I'll say.
Man, we got some things to talk about with Florida State. Memphis, no, they're not going to be favored, but it is going to be a heck of a lot closer.
I think the line is 1.5.
I think it jumped up to 5.
Okay.
Because people started putting money on Florida State, but that's gonna be an interesting one for sure. But let's get the Tigers through Troy first. But yeah, like I said, Friday Football Fever coming up tonight. Our game of the week, the battle for Germantown, Houston versus Germantown at Germantown High School. I'll be there with a live preview at 6 o'clock, and join us for all the fun coming up tonight at 10. For Jacob Gallant, I am